Here we go. We're going to get started here with graphing quadratics part 2. A little chilly out here in the garage, so I'll keep it short and sweet. But I do want to say, graphing quadratics, what we're doing here, I think as far as algebra goes, this is the most involved thing that we do. It is one of the tougher things, so we already spent one day, Wednesday working on this. This video will be for Thursday, and then even early next week we'll work some with this stuff again. So hang in there with this. We got 2 examples. These are the kind of longer ones. There's 3 main parts. You've already done 2 of the parts, and then the third part is kind of the big section so that we can get to the graph. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the review part, which is finding the vertex. So that is step 1. So we've got A, B, and C right here. So for the vertex, we're going to go x equals the opposite of B, so positive 4 over 2 times A, which is 2. So we get 4 over 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and so we get the x value is 1. So for our vertex so far, we've just got that x is 1. And then we go to the y value. So that if step 1 is done, now we go to here. We're going to substitute x into these spots. So 2 times x squared minus 4 times x plus 1. So now in these spots, we're going to fill in with this number we found for x. So the 1 goes here and here. Feel free to stop if I'm moving too quickly. Just hit the pause and catch up with your notes or whatever you're taking, wherever you're writing this down. And so use your calculator for this. I would use Desmos Online, or if you have your own scientific calculator, that works perfect. But anyhow, I would use the parentheses. We end up with y is equal to, what do we end up with there? I think we get negative 1. Okay. All right, so that is our vertex. So our vertex is going to be the point, positive 1 for x, negative 1 for y. Right, and that gets us to our new step today, which is to make a table. Right, it's going to be an XY chart. The vertex, we always want to go in the middle, because if we were to plot the vertex over here, which I talked about yesterday at 1, negative 1, that's right here. Our axis of symmetry is the one that divides the parabola in half. Now I already know it's going to open up because A was positive, so it's going to look something like this. However, because it's going to open this way, we're going to have symmetry on both sides of this vertex. So because of that symmetry, let's go ahead and put the vertex in there. So that goes at 1, negative 1. So the symmetry is that this one and this one should match up, just like this one and this one should match up. Because as the parabola opens up, there's two points here or here, wherever it's going to be. So that's what we have to do now, is to figure out the rest of the table by substitution. So essentially this step that we just did, we're going to have to do a couple more times to fill out the rest of the table. Now, how do I decide what do I fill in these other x values with? Okay, well technically you can pick whatever you want, but I would pick the ones closest to the vertex. So on the number line, here's 1, so I can go, if I go backwards, or backwards or forwards. I'm going to, if here's 1, I'm going to go to 2 and then 3. So I'll put 2 and 3 here. And then go in the other direction, I go back 1 is 0, and then negative 1. So that's how I get that. So figuring out what the x values will be in my table is a huge step for what we're doing here. Because really, once you figure that out, it's more of this step where we do substitution again. And then just use your calculator, right? Now, anytime 0 is involved, I would use the 0, because these two are going to match up. They're symmetric points, like we talked about even with vertex form that was on Tuesday. Okay, so I'm going to take the 0 and plug it in here, just like I did the 1. So for that, I'm going to have y equals 2 times 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 1. Now what happens here is that the zeros all just wash out. 0 times anything is 0. 0 here is 0, so we only end up get that whole thing equals 1. So the 1 goes here. But because it's a parabola, 0, 1, that's this point right here. Okay? Because it's here, if this is the axis of symmetry, this is going to match up. So I could test this and use the calculator to do this with a 2, but it's always going to be the same as long as it's an equal distance. So this will be a 1. So a 2, 1 right there. So there you can already see the start of my parabola. This one goes here, right like that. Now what we're also going to do is find the ones that go up here. So I can pick either point, either the 3 or the negative 1. All right, so this time let's say I pick the 3. So y equals 2 times the 3 squared minus 4 times the 3 plus the 1. Now it looks really complicated, but if you just go in, depending on what kind of calculator you have, if you just change the 0 into 3's, that can work out pretty quick. And you just hit enter and it'll spit out your answer for you. Okay, you don't have to do this in your head. I believe when we do this one, we end up getting a positive 7 on the calculator. So if this is 7, then that one will also be 7, because over at 3 we're going to go up. 7 would be up here, and so there's always a symmetric point. So at -1 positive 7, so -1 positive 7 is up here. So our points that we had here are going to keep going up like this, and there we go, we've got our parabola. Okay, so there is a lot of work there. I understand that. These are, like I said, I think they might be the toughest thing we do in Algebra 1 as far as just the amount of work we have to do. So that's part of why Wednesday I want to show you just getting the vertex, so that today, Thursday, we can put it all together with the table. All right, so we're going to practice this, as this is really the first half of the chapter, is really trying to get this process down. Okay? All right, so there's number 1. So I got a few things to erase here. Pause it here. You got the whole question up there. If you need to pause and go back and add anything to that, to your notes. Okay? All right, so let's erase this. I'm going to keep most of the steps over there. Let's just keep this part. Okay, I hope everybody's doing well. It seems like, obviously, we've got a lot going on. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but if you have any questions or really, anything you're anxious about as far as the math stuff goes, I really want to help you out, so please reach out and let me know. All right, so for number 2, we're just going to do one more of these because there's a lot going on. For number 2, we got y equals -x squared plus 8x. I think it was -10. All right. Okay, so even before we do anything, we already know that this graph is going to open down. Because it's negative, it's going to open down like a frown. Things aren't going well. So, but anyhow, negative is going to open down. All right, so we've got the a value. This is really a -1. So we got a, b, and c. So here we go. We start off with step 1. X equals opposite of b, so -8 over 2 times a is -1. We get -8 over a -2. So that is a positive 4. So if you want to go ahead and start filling in the table, 4 is right there. Okay. Now the y value. So we go to the next. We're going to plug it in and substitute. So now this is very important. Make sure you put the negative, or -1 in this case, outside the parentheses squared. The 8 is outside the parentheses just like before, -10. Okay. So that part, this part right here, very, very important. Okay. So now we're going to plug in the 4 into the parentheses, and then use your calculator. You do not have to do this in your head. So I'm going to shorten this up. So this is -10, so I can fit this here and still have room. So we multiply this out, use your calculator, and I believe we should get, we get a 6, don't we? Okay, it should be a positive 6, so that fills in our vertex. So our vertex is at +4, +6, so that's up here. So our axis of symmetry runs right down through there. So I think you don't have to always write the axis of symmetry. Like when we would do this test in class, I know things are a little bit different at the moment. I tell students you don't have to write it, but I always think that it helps to see that, because now when this opens down, we're always going to have points that match up, and that's where these points match up. And that's why we don't have to do all that over again with the substitution. Now the points we want to check points around. So if this is the 4, we're checking 5 points. So we'll go 2 spaces this way and 2 there. So we'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So figuring that out can be tough as well. All right. So now I'm just going to pick the lower ones. I'll start with a 3. So I'm going to go y equals, I'm going to do the same thing. -1 times 3 squared plus 8 times the 3 minus the 10. I see what that gets, and it should end up being a 5. So a 5 is here. So that means I have the point at 3, 5. and see here on the graph. How do I know that this one's going to also be 5? Well, because it's going to be symmetric. Symmetric just means the same on both sides, right? Okay, so that's the axis of symmetry. So we have the 2 points that are symmetric, and that's why that's the 5. So now we just need to check the 2 or the 6. You could check either one, you would get the same answer either way. We'll check the 2. So the -1 comes from there. Plug in the 2 squared plus 8 times the 2 minus the 10. All right, so we multiply all that out again. You can just plug it into your calculator, change the number if you save what you did there, save you some time, and that one turns out, let's make sure I don't get this wrong, we get a 2. So those will both be 2, so we go over 2 and up 2. And so because of that, this will be symmetric. Those match up. The table has symmetry as well. So this goes like this. This one's going to go here. So there's our wonderful parabola right there. Okay? All right, so that just for 2 questions took almost 11 minutes. If you have questions, please reach out. The homework that will go with this will actually be a fill in the blank, which is not so much multiple choice. We did a lot of multiple choice with the first 2 assignments this week. This one on Thursday. We've got Friday and Monday for you guys to ask some questions if you have them. Hang in there with this. Keep working hard, picking up what you can as we go, and reach out if you have questions. Right? Hope everyone's staying safe, and it's getting cold out here in the garage, so I'm gonna shut this down. Have a good one.